I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this, but here I am. I'm Jack, a 32-year-old architect, and I've been married to Rachel for 8 years. We have a beautiful 6-year-old daughter, Lily, who is the light of my life. Until recently, I thought Rachel was too, but everything changed a few months ago. It all started with a feeling. You know, that gnawing suspicion that something isn't quite right. Rachel had been distant, and I noticed she was spending a lot more time on her phone, always smiling at her screen, but locking it the moment I came near. Late-night work meetings and unexplained absences became more frequent. My gut was telling me something was off, but I pushed the thought aside, chalking it up to my own insecurities. Then came the first real clue. One evening, Rachel left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. A message popped up, and curiosity got the better of me. It was from a guy named Chris, someone I'd never heard her mention before. The message was innocuous enough, just a "can't wait to see you tomorrow," but it was enough to set off alarm bells. I decided to keep an eye on things without confronting her right away. I started noticing patterns. Her frequent absences coinciding with messages from Chris, her sudden change in wardrobe, and the way she lit up when she thought no one was watching. It was painful, like a slow, creeping dread that settled in my chest. I knew I needed proof before I could confront her, so I began gathering evidence. I installed a small app on her phone that mirrored her texts and calls to mine. I felt guilty and sick to my stomach doing it, but I had to know the truth. The texts between Rachel and Chris were damning. They were explicit, detailing their plans and past encounters. My world shattered with each message I read. It wasn't just a one-time fling. This had been going on for months, maybe even longer. My wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was living a double life right under my nose. The betrayal cut deep, but the worst part was pretending everything was normal while I figured out what to do next. I knew I couldn't confront her without a plan. I wanted her to feel the same humiliation and pain she had inflicted on me. I wanted the world to see her for who she really was. So, I started to devise a plan, a way to expose her infidelity in the most public, devastating way possible. The centerpiece of my plan? A live broadcast of her cheating, streamed for all to see. It was drastic and vengeful, but I was a man pushed to his limits. The next steps would be crucial, and I needed to execute everything perfectly to achieve the impact I desired. The time for action was coming, and I was ready to set my plan into motion. With my plan in motion, I had to be meticulous. Every detail had to be perfect, every step precise. First, I needed to ensure Rachel continued to meet Chris without suspecting anything. I started being more accommodating, encouraging her to take time for herself. If she thought I was less suspicious, she'd be more careless. Next, I needed the right equipment. I researched the best hidden cameras and audio recording devices. They had to be discreet, easy to hide, but with excellent quality to capture every detail. After a few days of comparison shopping, I settled on a set of cameras and mics that could be easily hidden in our bedroom and living room, places I knew they frequented. The next step was gaining access to Rachel's computer. I needed to ensure she was still communicating with Chris and planning their next rendezvous. One evening, while she was taking a shower, I installed a keylogger on her laptop. It was quick, and she would never know. Reading their messages was gut-wrenching, but it was necessary. Their next planned meeting was 2 days away, at our house. Perfect. It gave me just enough time to set everything up. On the day of their meeting, I took a personal day from work, feigning a sudden illness. Rachel was concerned at first, but I reassured her I just needed rest. She left for her supposed work meeting with Chris, giving me the house to myself for the entire day. I installed the cameras in strategic locations, one in the bedroom, hidden among the books on the shelf, another in the living room, concealed within the ventilation grill. The audio mics were small enough to hide under the furniture, completely invisible. Everything was set. All that was left was to wait for them to arrive. I spent the rest of the day out of the house, trying to keep my mind occupied. I had a mix of excitement and dread churning in my stomach. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, but it also meant facing the harsh reality of my wife's betrayal. When I returned home later that evening, the house was empty. Rachel hadn't come back yet, but the cameras and mics had done their job. I downloaded the footage and watched with a heavy heart as my worst fears were confirmed in vivid detail. The sound of their laughter, the sight of their intimacy. It was all there, captured for anyone to see. The final piece of my plan was in place. I would stream this footage live, making sure Rachel and Chris's betrayal was exposed to the world. It was cruel, it was extreme, but I felt it was justified. The pain they caused me would be nothing compared to the public humiliation they were about to face. I scheduled the live stream for the following evening, right when Rachel would be home. My heart pounded with anticipation and fear, but there was no turning back now. This was my moment of revenge, and I was ready to take it. The day of the live stream arrived, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. I woke up feeling a strange mixture of nervousness and exhilaration. Rachel seemed oblivious, her usual cheerful self, humming in the kitchen as she made breakfast. She had no idea what was coming. I acted as normal as I could, masking my true feelings behind a facade of calm. I kissed Rachel goodbye as she left for work, telling her I'd see her later. Little did she know, I had taken another personal day from the office to make final preparations. I double-checked everything. The cameras were still in place, the recording devices functional. I tested the live stream setup, ensuring it would broadcast without a hitch. I had chosen a popular social media platform, one that would guarantee a large audience. The title was innocuous enough to draw in curious viewers. A surprise unveiling. Throughout the day, I kept monitoring the chat and viewer count on the streaming platform. People were already starting to tune in, intrigued by the mysterious announcement. I couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction watching the numbers climb. As the clock ticked closer to the designated time, my pulse quickened. I needed to make sure Rachel would be home on time. I sent her a casual text. Hey, hope your day is going well. Any idea what time you'll be home? I thought we could have a nice dinner together. She replied almost instantly. That sounds lovely. I'll be home around 7. Perfect. That gave me just enough time to set the stream to start automatically at 7:30. I wanted to be there when she saw it, to witness her reaction firsthand. Around 6:30, I began setting up dinner. It was a simple meal, but I wanted to maintain the illusion of normalcy for as long as possible. I poured 2 glasses of wine and lit a few candles, creating a romantic atmosphere that belied the storm about to hit. Rachel walked in just before 7, greeted by the smell of food and the soft glow of candlelight. She smiled, clearly pleased by the effort I had put in. This looks amazing. Jack, thank you. We sat down to eat, and for a moment, it felt like old times. We talked about her day, shared a few laughs, but I couldn't fully engage. My mind was on the countdown, ticking ever closer to the moment of truth. As we finished dinner, I suggested we move to the living room to relax. Rachel agreed, bringing her glass of wine with her. I positioned myself so I could see her face clearly when the broadcast began. At 7:30 sharp, my phone buzzed with a notification. The live stream had started. My heart raced as I covertly pulled up the stream on my phone, making sure everything was working as planned. The viewer count had skyrocketed. Hundreds of people were now watching. I handed Rachel my phone. Hey, I found something interesting online. Take a look. She took the phone, her expression curious. As she watched the screen, confusion turned to horror. The live stream showed her and Chris in our home, their intimate moments displayed for all to see. Her face went pale, and she dropped the phone, staring at me in shock. Jack, what is this? She stammered, her voice trembling. I stood up, looking down at her with cold detachment. It's the truth. I thought it was time everyone saw what you've been doing behind my back. Her eyes filled with tears and she shook her head in disbelief. How could you do this? I felt a flicker of doubt, but I pushed it aside. How could you do this to us? To our family? The room was silent except for the sound of the stream continuing in the background. The chat was exploding with comments, people reacting to the shocking revelation. Rachel's betrayal was now public, her reputation shattered. The calm before the storm was over. The storm had hit, and there was no going back. Rachel's face was a mask of shock and despair. She stared at me, tears streaming down her cheeks, her hands trembling. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the sense of vindication. She had betrayed me, and now the world knew. Jack, please, she pleaded, her voice cracking. Turn it off. This isn't fair. Fair? I echoed, my voice cold. You think what you did was fair? Sneaking around with Chris for months, lying to me, betraying our family? You deserve this. She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I stood there, arms crossed, watching her crumble. It was a sight I had longed for, but it didn't bring the satisfaction I had expected. Instead, it left a hollow feeling in my chest. The phone buzzed with notifications, the live stream continuing to gather viewers and comments. People were outraged, sympathetic, shocked. The chat was a whirlwind of emotions, with some condemning Rachel, others questioning my methods. I ignored it all, focusing on the woman who had torn my life apart. Rachel finally looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Jack, please," she whispered. "Think about Lily. She'll see this someday. She'll see what we've done." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Lily, our innocent, sweet daughter. She was the collateral damage in all of this. I had been so consumed by my need for revenge that I hadn't fully considered the impact on her. I hesitated, my resolve wavering. Rachel saw the doubt in my eyes and seized the moment. "We can fix this," she said desperately. "We can turn off the stream, talk about everything. Please, for Lily's sake." I clenched my fists, battling the conflicting emotions inside me. The live stream had done its job, exposing Rachel's infidelity to the world. Continuing it would only prolong the humiliation, but ending it felt like letting her off too easily. Taking a deep breath, I walked over to the phone and ended the live stream. The room fell into an oppressive silence, broken only by Rachel's soft sobs. I sat down across from her, feeling the weight of what I had done settle on my shoulders. "Why?" I asked quietly. "Why did you do it?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with regret. "I don't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was lonely, and Chris was there, giving me attention. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated bitterly. "You call months of lies and betrayal a mistake?" She flinched at my harsh tone, but nodded. "Yes, a mistake, one I will regret for the rest of my life." I leaned back, the anger slowly draining out of me. "What happens now?" I asked, more to myself than to her. Rachel took a deep breath, composing herself. "We need to figure out how to move forward. For Lily's sake, if nothing else. We need to talk, really talk, and decide what's best for her." I nodded, knowing she was right. Our daughter was the most important person in this mess, and we owed it to her to handle this as best as we could. The fallout from the live stream was only beginning, but at that moment, I knew we had to find a way through it for Lily, if not for ourselves. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with pain, but it was one we had to walk together, no matter how fractured our relationship had become. The storm had passed, leaving devastation in its wake. Now it was time to pick up the pieces and face the consequences of our actions. The days that followed were a blur of emotional turmoil. Rachel and I barely spoke, existing like strangers in the same house. The tension was palpable, and Lily, sensing something was wrong, became unusually quiet and withdrawn. It broke my heart to see her like that, and I knew we had to do something. But I felt trapped in my own anger and betrayal. One evening, as I was sifting through the aftermath of the live stream on social media, I received a message request from an unfamiliar account. It was from someone named Jenna. Curiosity piqued, I opened the message. "Hey, Jack, I know you don't know me, but I think you need to hear this. Chris isn't who you think he is. Meet me tomorrow at the cafe on 5th Street at 10 a.m. It's important." My mind raced with questions. Who was Jenna? And what did she know about Chris? Despite my skepticism, I felt compelled to meet her. I needed answers. And if there was more to the story, I had to know. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe a few minutes early, scanning the crowd for anyone who might be Jenna, a woman in her late 20s, with long dark hair and a serious expression, approached me. "Jack?" she asked. I nodded, and she gestured for me to sit down. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be strange, but I needed to talk to you." "What is this about?" I asked, my impatience seeping through. "What do you know about Chris?" She took a deep breath. "Chris is my brother, and I hate to say this, but he's a serial cheater. He's been doing this for years, with multiple women. He has a pattern. He finds vulnerable women, gains their trust, and then destroys their lives." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" Jenna's eyes were filled with a mix of sadness and frustration. "I've been tracking his behavior for years, trying to warn people, but he always manages to slip away. He's manipulative and charming, and he leaves a trail of broken relationships wherever he goes. Your wife isn't the first, and she won't be the last." My mind reeled. Rachel had been caught in Chris's web, just like so many others. But there was more. Jenna leaned in closer, lowering her voice. I found out something else, something even more disturbing. Chris isn't just cheating with your wife. He's recording everything and selling the footage online. Your live stream, it might have been part of his plan all along. The shock hit me like a freight train. What? Are you saying he knew about the live stream? Jenna nodded. I think so. He's done it before. It's part of how he manipulates and controls. He might have even encouraged your wife to keep her phone accessible, knowing you'd eventually find out. He plays a long game, and he's always one step ahead. My anger shifted focus, now directed at the man who had not only seduced my wife, but also played me like a puppet. We need to stop him, I said through gritted teeth. Jenna agreed. I've been gathering evidence for years. With your help, we can finally expose him. But we have to be careful. He's dangerous and resourceful. If he suspects anything, he'll disappear. Leaving the cafe, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The betrayal I felt from Rachel was now mixed with a burning desire for justice. Chris had manipulated us all, and it was time to turn the tables. When I got home, Rachel was waiting, looking anxious. Where were you? She asked. I looked at her, my expression hardening. We need to talk. There's more to this than we realized, and it's time we fight back. Her confusion turned to determination as I explained what Jenna had told me. The storm was far from over, but now we had a new target. Chris had underestimated us, and it was time to make him pay. Together, Rachel and I would bring him down, not just for ourselves, but for all the others he had hurt. The unexpected twist had given us a new purpose, and for the first time in a long while, we were united. The road ahead was uncertain, but we were ready to face it together. Rachel and I sat at the kitchen table late into the night. Our initial animosity temporarily set aside as we plotted our next move. The shock of Jenna's revelations had shifted our focus from our personal betrayal to a shared mission, bringing Chris down. We need to gather all the evidence we can, I said, spreading out the notes I'd taken from my meeting with Jenna. Every message, every video, anything that can prove what he's been doing. Rachel nodded, still looking shaken but resolute. I'll go through my phone and computer. There must be something there. We can also check the footage you recorded from the live stream. Maybe there's more we missed. Jenna laid it out for us. First, we need to secure all the evidence, make copies and store them in multiple locations, just in case. Then, we create a comprehensive dossier and send it to every news outlet, law enforcement agency, and victim support group we can think of. We also need to reach out to his other victims. If we can find them, their testimonies will be crucial. The plan was solid, but it required precision and secrecy. Any misstep, and Chris could disappear, leaving us with nothing. We divided the tasks. Rachel and I would focus on securing and copying the evidence, while Jenna would handle contacting the authorities and the media. For the next week, we worked around the clock. Rachel and I took turns watching over Lily, making sure she was kept away from the tension and chaos. We became like covert operatives in our own home, always looking over our shoulders, always fearing that Chris might somehow find out. One night, as we were finalizing the dossier, Rachel looked up at me, tears in her eyes. Jack, I'm so sorry for everything. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know how much I regret it. As we delved into our respective tasks, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of camaraderie forming between us. The rage and hurt were still there, but now they were directed outward, towards a common enemy. It was a small comfort, but it was enough to keep us going. Over the next few days, we worked tirelessly, compiling everything we could find. Rachel found numerous messages from Chris, each one more damning than the last. There were also hidden folders on her computer containing photos and videos she hadn't known existed, all taken without her consent. I contacted Jenna and told her what we had found. She agreed to meet us again, this time at a more discreet location, her apartment. We needed to be careful, knowing Chris could be watching our every move. When we arrived, Jenna welcomed us with a grim expression. I've been waiting for this moment for years, she said, leading us to her living room where a wall was covered in photographs, documents, and notes about Chris. This is everything I've gathered. Together, we have enough to expose him. Rachel and I shared a determined look. What's the plan? I asked. I paused, feeling the weight of her words. Rachel, this doesn't fix what happened between us, but right now, we need to stay focused. After this is over, we'll figure out where we stand. She nodded, wiping her tears. Thank you. Let's finish this. With the dossier complete, we handed it off to Jenna. She assured us she would send it out the next morning. All we could do now was wait and hope that our efforts would be enough to bring Chris to justice. The days that followed were agonizing. We kept a low profile, going about our daily routines while anxiously checking the news and our messages. Then, one evening, our phones lit up with notifications. The story had broken. Major news outlets were reporting on Chris's exploits, the evidence laid bare for all to see. Victims began coming forward, sharing their own harrowing experiences. Law enforcement agencies announced they were opening investigations. Rachel and I watched the coverage in a mix of relief and trepidation. We had done it. We had exposed Chris, but what came next was uncertain. Our lives were still in shambles, our relationship fractured. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was a glimmer of hope. We had faced a common enemy and come out stronger. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild what had been broken. The fight wasn't over, but we were ready for whatever came next. The fallout from the expose on Chris was swift and brutal. News outlets continued to cover the story, and Chris's face was plastered everywhere. More victims came forward, adding their voices to the growing chorus of accusations. Law enforcement had issued a warrant for his arrest, but Chris was nowhere to be found. He had vanished, just as Jenna had warned. Despite the overwhelming support from the public and other victims, Rachel and I were on edge. We knew Chris was cunning and dangerous, and the fact that he was in hiding made us fear he could come after us. We took extra precautions, installing security cameras around the house and being vigilant about our surroundings. Then, one evening, as we were putting Lily to bed, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat, and I shared a tense look with Rachel. "Stay here," I whispered, grabbing the baseball bat I had stashed near the front door. I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. To my shock, it was Chris. He looked disheveled and desperate, nothing like the confident manipulator I had seen in the videos and photos. I hesitated for a moment, then opened the door slightly, keeping the bat out of sight. "Chris, what do you want?" I asked, my voice cold and steady. He glanced around nervously before speaking. "I need to talk to you." "Jack, it's important." "There's nothing to talk about. You need to leave before I call the police." "Please," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Just hear me out. 5 minutes. That's all I ask." Against my better judgment, I opened the door wider and stepped outside, closing it behind me. "You have 5 minutes. Start talking." Chris took a deep breath. "I know you have no reason to believe me, but I'm not the monster they say I am. Yes, I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but there's more to this story." "Save it," I interrupted. "We've seen the evidence. We've heard from your other victims. There's no excuse for what you've done." Chris nodded, looking defeated. "I know, and I deserve to be punished. But you need to know the whole truth before it's too late." I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "Stay here," I ordered. "I'm calling the police." As I dialed 911, I couldn't shake the feeling that our fight was far from over. Jenna's betrayal, if true, added a new layer of complexity to an already tangled web. When the police arrived, they took Chris into custody, and I provided my statement. Afterward, I went back inside, where Rachel was waiting anxiously. "What happened?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. "We need to talk," I said, sitting down beside her. "Chris told me something that changes everything." As I recounted my conversation with Chris, Rachel's expression shifted from shock to disbelief. "Jenna? But she helped us. Why would she do that?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but we need to find out. We can't let this go until we have all the answers." The confrontation had given us new insight, but it also raised more questions. The storm was far from over, and now we had a new target in our sights. Jenna had played us all, and it was time to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. With a renewed sense of determination, Rachel and I prepared for the next phase of our battle. We had come this far together, and we would see it through to the end. The final showdown was approaching, and we were ready to face whatever came our way. Determined to uncover the truth, Rachel and I agreed to meet Jenna again. We needed to confront her with what Chris had told us and see if there was any merit to his accusations. I arranged a meeting at a public park, a neutral ground where we could talk without fear of immediate danger. We arrived at the park early, the morning sun casting long shadows across the grass. I felt a mix of apprehension and resolve, knowing this confrontation could bring closure or reveal an even deeper betrayal. Rachel squeezed my hand, her expression mirroring my determination. Jenna arrived a few minutes later, her face lighting up with a smile when she saw us. "Hey, you two. How are you holding up?" she asked, her tone concerned. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Jenna, we need to talk. Chris told us something disturbing, and we need answers." Her smile faltered, replaced by a look of confusion. "What did he say?" "He claimed you orchestrated everything," Rachel said, her voice steady but laced with tension, "that you manipulated him and used us to ruin his life out of revenge." Jenna's eyes widened in shock. "What? That's absurd. Why would I do that?" "That's what we want to know," I said, watching her closely for any sign of deception. She took a deep breath, visibly shaken. "I don't know what he's trying to pull, but I promise you, I'm not behind this. I came to you because I wanted to stop him, not because of some vendetta." I felt a pang of doubt. Jenna's reaction seemed genuine, but if Chris was lying, what was his endgame? Before I could press further, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Check your email." I opened my email and found a message with an attached video file, heart pounding. I played it. The video showed Chris and Jenna in what looked like a heated argument. Jenna was shouting at Chris, her words barely audible over the wind noise, but it was clear she was accusing him of something. "I trusted you," she yelled. "You ruined everything." Chris's response was calm, almost smug. "You always wanted to play the hero, Jenna, but look where it's gotten you. They'll never believe you now." The video cut off, leaving us in stunned silence. Jenna's face was pale, her hands trembling. I didn't know that was recorded. He must have been planning this all along." Rachel and I exchanged a glance. The pieces were starting to fit together. Chris had anticipated being caught and had set up a counter-narrative to discredit Jenna and confuse us. But the video, if genuine, indicated that Jenna was indeed trying to expose him, not manipulate us. "We need to get this to the authorities," I said, my mind racing. "If they see this, it might help them build a stronger case against Chris." Jenna nodded, her relief palpable. "I'll go with you. We need to clear this up once and for all." We drove to the police station, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. We handed over the video and explained everything to the detective handling Chris's case. He listened intently, promising to investigate further. As we left the station, a sense of cautious optimism washed over me. We had taken a crucial step towards justice, but I knew the road ahead was still uncertain. In the days that followed, the investigation gained momentum. More victims came forward. Bolstered by the new evidence, Chris was eventually tracked down and arrested, his elaborate web of deceit finally unraveling. For Rachel and me, it was a bittersweet victory. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but through the ordeal, we had found a way to communicate and support each other. It would take time, but we were committed to rebuilding our relationship for Lily's sake and our own. One evening, as we sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Rachel turned to me. "Do you think we'll ever be okay again?" I took her hand in mine, feeling the warmth of her skin. "I don't know, but what I do know is that we're stronger together. We faced a nightmare and came out the other side. That's something." She smiled, a hint of hope in her eyes. "I guess we'll take it one day at a time." "One day at a time," I agreed. The storm had passed, leaving us battered but not broken. Together, we faced an uncertain future, but with renewed strength and a deeper understanding of each other, and for now, that was enough.